the microphone on? Yeah, so people outside can hear. Brilliant. Thank you all very much for coming. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Natalie Crisp. I'm the president of DSU. We've organised this forum with Wes Streeting in conjunction with the Union Society in order to give all of you guys an opportunity to ask him any questions about recent events surrounding the cancellation of the DUS's multiculturalism debate. Just a couple of housekeeping things. If you could all turn your mobile phones off, because we've obviously got this relay going out to people outside. I don't think they'd appreciate ringing. I know I'm awful. I was on my radio show yesterday and my phone went off about 3 times. But yeah, that would be brilliant. And also, obviously, I know tempers are running high. I know a lot of people are very passionate about this. But obviously, courtesy and all that would be lovely as well. Wes is going to say a brief couple of things, and then we'll just open up questions to the floor. Does that sound okay? Fab, brilliant. Thank you.
Cool. Right, well, first of all, thanks for coming along in huge numbers. Oh, sorry, I've got staying in the microphone because the people outside are waiting to hear me, although hopefully, you know, if it's the person who called me a cunt on the way in, I'm not so sympathetic. That might be the only time some of you give me an applause, but there you go. What I wanted to do with the time we've got was just before we get stuck in, or you get stuck in, to some of the issues and concerns and questions, challenges, whatever you want to kind of ask me or throw at me or say to me. What I wanted to do was just begin by setting out a few things in context. I will talk about what NUS's no platform policy is, why we have it, why we think it's an effective tool for tackling the BNP. But then just towards the end of those remarks, I will come on to deal specifically with a thing which I think is, from my reading of the emails, the Facebook groups, the Twitter feeds, the thing that I think has caused most genuine anger towards NUS, which is the letter which was sent by one of our national LGBT officers and our national black students officer, and I will deal directly with that. Any concerns that you might have had so far that your concerns haven't been heard or noticed or listened to by members of the NUS National Executive, I can give you firm assurances that Durham was very much the word on everyone's lips when we met yesterday. So all of that said, the first thing I'll do is just kind of talk about the BNP and why I think that the BNP are such a major threat, and that's partly because people who've been writing to me so far, there's always that stock line either right at the beginning or maybe in the second paragraph that says, I want to make it absolutely clear I abhor the BNP, I'm not an apologist for the BNP, and I think that's kind of a pretty good starting point, because I don't think I or anyone else at NUS hopefully, but certainly not even myself personally or NUS as an organisation, would accuse the people who organised the debate here with 2 members of the BNP of having anything less than honourable intentions in terms of what they hoped to achieve with the debate, the kind of discourse they wanted to set out, and the ambition which was to expose and take down some of the rather flawed arguments that BNP have. So if you stand up and think that NUS's approach or tactics are wrong, I'm not going to turn around and say, well, you're an apologist for the BNP or you're a Nazi sympathiser or kind of engage in that kind of sloganising. Unless, of course, you do stand up and say, I'm a member of the BNP and a Nazi and I think you're wrong. Then I think, you know, kind of there. But too often we do hear the BNP described as an extremist party, or they're characterised as an anti-immigration party, they're characterised as a nationalist party, or in even more simplistic terms, they're just typecast as a right-wing party. And I don't think any of those things are effective labels for what the BNP is and what they stand for. The BNP is a racist Nazi party. Those are its ideological roots. It's rooted in an ideology of white supremacy, and that white supremacy is based on a notion of racial hierarchy. The BNP believes in an all-white Britain. The BNP's own constitution, which is obviously a matter for the courts at the moment, says the British National Party stands for the preservation of the national and ethnic character of the British people and is wholly opposed to any form of racial integration between British and non-European peoples. It is therefore committed to stemming and reversing the tide of non-white immigration. And as much as the BNP publicly and in their newly smartened up capacity emphasise their policy of voluntary repatriation, it doesn't take a huge leap of the imagination to understand how it is that their constitutional objective of an all-white Britain would be brought about. The BNP is also a party whose policies manifest themselves in forms of apartheid. Their 2005 general election manifesto set out very clearly that they would give priority for whites in jobs, housing and education, treating anyone who doesn't meet the BNP's ethnic criteria or ethnic definition of white, treating them as second-class citizens, people who are unwanted in Britain, whether or not they were born here, whether or not they were welcomed here, whether or not they are British citizens. The BNP are also Holocaust deniers. Nick Griffin himself has referred to the Holocaust as the Holocaust. He says, in 1997, I am well aware that the orthodox opinion is that 6 million Jews were gassed and cremated or turned into lampshades. Orthodox opinion also once held that the earth is flat. I have reached a conclusion that the extermination tool is a mixture of Allied wartime propaganda, extremely profitable lie, and latter witch hysteria. The BNP is also a party not just of Nazi convictions, but of criminal convictions. Many of their leading members, in fact even some of their elected representatives, have been convicted of violent offences, racially motivated offences, and all the rest of it. And the reason I say this is not just to come along and kind of lecture you, or hope that kind of talking at length about the BNP will distract from the gripes you have with NUS. It's because I think that up and down the country there are lots of people who are voting for the BNP in greater numbers than ever before, who have no idea whatsoever about what the BNP genuinely stands for. They are a growing threat. They are gaining more votes at the polls. They are gaining, I'll take on points in a moment, but they're gaining more votes at the polls than ever before. And I do understand that the elected capacities of the BNP, where there is MEPs or local councillors, makes it much harder for organisations like the BNP to say we won't invite them on programmes like Question Time, makes it much harder for the rest of us to just simply ignore the BNP and hope they will go away. And that's not what I'm arguing. I don't believe we should simply ignore the BNP and hope they will go away. The question... Handy water break interlude there, thanks very much. But the starting point and the central question I think all of us should ask, and this is a serious point, the question we should ask in that context, given what they stand for, and given what the implications of having more BNP elected representatives, or indeed in places like Barking and Stoke-on-Trent where it's a real possibility, if we think about what the consequences would be of the BNP actually being in power with the ability to make decisions, the first question that should be on the minds of each of us who believe in the principles of equality, democracy, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. The question that should be at the forefront of any of us who believe in those values is how do we effectively tackle the BNP and its root causes? Now it's within this context, I believe, that the Durham Union Society chose to host that debate. That was one of the objectives, the oxygen of publicity, giving them a platform and taking them down with well-prepared intelligence arguments is the way to defeat the BNP. But I just don't... But I think it's a blunt instrument, and I'll tell you why.